Hello everyone. A few problems in the original stream regarding sound, so I've changed that and I've relaunched the stream again. As I said before, following the work that I did previously on Postman, which is a tool for testing APIs. You can create them as well and do documentation on them, but I only focused on the testing aspects of them. I'm now moving on to a different, an actual framework, not a tool as such, called Python requests. It's a library for calling, a REST API, and then viewing the output. You do tests against it. You can do assertions. This is just really about the about looking at the output. I'll just show you the page for it. I think the sound might be choppy. I apologize for that. Hopefully I can deal with that by increasing the bitrate somewhat. I'm having a few problems with the internet. Anyway, what is it here? This is Python requests. Basically, some API endpoint, particularly a REST API. I think you can do it for both, actually, but I think it's only really REST. docs.python-request.org. I really quite like this tool. I've used it a bit in my job and also when I was studying security testing. So I'll just carry on. I would take an API from somewhere and some open API and make some calls against it and execute some assertions. This will be in a similar vein. So here I've got PyCharm loaded, and what I'll simply do is demonstrate. I'll be using http bin.org, which what it does is it allows you to send data in and execute a GET request, which returns exactly the same data back. So I'll show you how it works. For example, I'll just do 4 import requests. This is partly me just familiarizing myself with it again, and partly going through some examples which I wrote before. So actually, I'll start this. The actual URL I'll be using is called HTTP. I'll be wrapping this in some sort of as a parameter in an actual GET request. http.org/get, and then you have a payload. So if I did, for example, A equals hello, do something like that actually, equals hello, and E equals Paul, which is my name. I open it up in a browser. should load up. I don't know why it's taking some time. Okay, there you get your headers and you get your arguments returned. Original URL. This will be under one another. There is no body. There's something to think about in these responses. There may be examples where I do actually test against the contents of a HTTP response. Sorry, of a REST HTTP response body. And I've actually prepared statements in advance. Spend time puzzling over them. Is payload equals, or they do that whole live coding thing where everything goes wrong. And that'd be a conference, and it is really awful. We go early. Rick. I'll just go to Steve. Surname. This is just a name I fictionally made up. Originally, the original I did when I wrote some of these as a demo, or as documentation for a course I was on. I actually rickrolled everyone and did Rick Astley. It was a bit of a laugh, but it's not exactly a joke that lasts very long. And what you do is you is request .get, so you actually make to the bin server HTTP bin endpoint. I actually find in many ways it's simpler than Postman. Although Postman's a bit more elegant in wrapping things around in functions, and in terms of you're not having to think about your assertion code. It's not the same way to do with, say, PyUnit or something like that. So that's your response, and then what we'll do is just print the response. I'm doing it in Python 3. So let me just keep this. And there's your document. See if I can wrap this. Just run it again. Alright, so there's your arguments. There's your headers. Headers typical except encoding, connection, host, user agent, that sort of thing. There's actually quite a few. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so sorry for that wait. So moving on, you can write a post as well. So I'll just comment this out for the moment. Actually, no, I won't do that. I'll just change that to post. It's the same. And what this does, it sends data directly to the API for it to consume in some way and to save, etc. The payload in this case being a dictionary, which is 2 key value pairs, one of them first name, the second one surname. Ooh, it doesn't allow that. Oh, no, what I've done. That's got to be post. Silly. Apologies for that. It's the same as submitting a form with with 2 fields, one of them being first name, and you sending the value Steve, and the second one being surname. You sent the value Jones. If you look further along, you've got JSON null origin that URL list. You can also do it with a list of tuples. So if I do, if I just change that to, if I just comment that out for a minute. I'm confusing 2 different languages at the same time. So if I do payload equals, so what I'm going to do is I'll send a tuple of tuples. Well, actually, I'll keep it as it was above first. First name. Steve. Surname. What's the other one? Jones. And this is different to the above, of course, because this is a tuple that has 2 further tuples in it, and this is a dictionary with 2 key value pairs, and it still works the same. So if you execute it, you've got your arguments. It's the same sending form, first name Steve, surname Jones. There's no difference. I think you can do it as a list as well. So if I change those to a list, and I execute this, as opposed to a tuple of tuples, we have a list of tuples, and it's the same thing, as if you submitted a form with fields in it. Now you can display this as text or raw. Or JSON. I'll go through various examples. So if I do that and type in content, it'll return it in a binary sort of way. And this means that require make some decision about encoding. So you can see the encoding there, and I think there are probably other examples. Yeah, there's not much difference between that and response dot. So I think what I displayed before. If I do response.json, ooh, interesting. Okay, I'll have to come back to that. What if I made a mistake? Okay, I'll come back to that one. This is the first of a few live streams I'm doing on requests, so I will have time to deal with any discrepancies or unexpected results. And this should return just a straight socket result. Raw. I wonder if I have to actually change this into text first. Or if I have to cast it as something, if I don't turn into string or something. Let me try again. Okay, so this returns it as JSON. It's actually a method that you have to submit empty parameters into. That's what I got wrong. It returns something else otherwise. Okay. Alright, I've just had a look at the documentation, and when you do a raw, because it's a socket response, you have to do a couple of things. First of all, it'll read a certain number of characters from the raw object, if you will. So I'm going to change that to a string equals true, because it returns back basically a socket. Return the first 15 characters from the stream. Looks about right. So if I set this to 100, it should return most. Alright, it returns the first 100 characters. Alright, okay, so that makes sense. I'll move on. You can also pass headers as well. And so if I go back to this and I just comment that out for a minute. Post. That's confusing two different things. If I just type in that and then type in I actually put in a referrer, which is actually quite useful when you're doing security testing. As in some websites or some APIs have different security protocols and behaviors when you refer to them from when you include a referrer from, I don't know, some approved website. This is something I used in a document I wrote, which has derived itself from the main Python requests help page. So headers equals headers. And then print response dot text. And what we'll see is we want to see these headers included in our response. Alright, okay. I need to know. I am still submitting headers, so I still need to put that back in. Interesting. What it is. That's what it means. It's not raw.txt, it's response.txt. Okay, so if I scroll along, as you can see, max forwards is now included, and the referrer is now included as well. So I've actually added these to the headers, and HTTP bin will just send the headers back. Alright, so the next step is, can you just display the headers? Well, you can actually, just type in headers. And it will just, and your response will only be the JSON of the actual list of headers associated with this response. You've got connection, so you've not got args anymore, or body. You should still have connection keep alive, content access control. Incidentally, it doesn't have these headers which I actually added. That's unusual. Let me just run it again. So it actually makes a call and returns it. That's interesting. These, I've submitted the headers still, along with my payload, but they don't appear here. Now it says that authorization headers can be overridden by credentials supplied by the auth parameter or by .NET RC, but I don't think any of those apply in this case. I haven't included anything under auth, for authorization. What I can do, let me just carry on anyway. What I can do is I can do print headers, and I can isolate individual headers and just display them. So I can do content type. And if I run this, then I should just have application.json on the next line. Yep. So you can extract each individual value for each key that's returned in the headers. You can also get status code as well. So what you can do is, let me just comment these out. Just get rid of that. And then just write response status code. And then your status code of 200, which obviously shows it's successful. What you can also do is, there are a series of, I suppose, enums that you can compare it against. So if I do response, see, one of the things I really like about using a framework as opposed to quest code. One of the things I really like about using a framework is to an integrated tool like Postman is the actual code completion that tools like the Python IDE has, and the fact that you can basically you don't have these actually. You can only see variables that you've created, using code completion in Postman. I'll just run this. Yep, so that's true. So if it's okay, then that returns true, and that you can use that in an assertion using unit or something. I don't know what the other options are actually. I'm going to write 404, I suppose. I'll just say. You get false. Yep. So that's saying that it doesn't match request.code.ok, but of course it does. So that'll always return true in this case. You can also do location redirection. So if I do, let me just go back to GitHub. Let me just do GitHub.home. The GitHub. Sorry, let me say it again. The GitHub.com homepage. Sorry, I managed to tongue-tie myself there a bit. You print the response URL. And then we'll do is we print the response history. And what this does is this will return 301. The reason it returns 301 is because GitHub redirects all its HTTP requests. I think almost all websites now to HTTPS. You can see that redirection in the response history. I don't know if Postman allows you to do this. Might ask. I might just go back and look at the help documents. It's still running. Yep, response 301. And what you can do as well is you can, and it won't allow it. Yeah, I don't think GitHub will return any sort of response.txt if you do this. But what you can do is you can also, and this is really for doing security testing, you can turn it off. You can force your request not to be redirected. So in this case, it will return the response from HTTP column /github.com. See, and you shouldn't see anything for it, or you shouldn't see the prompt page anyway. There you go. Nothing's returned. All right, so what I'll do is I'll concentrate on having a look at cookies next. So you can look at cookies. Just go to response.cookies. Return the cookies as what they call a request cookie jar, which is just its cookies collection. And there's nothing. Let me just change this back to, let me just take off the redirect. There you go. There's each of these is a cookie. And that's your session, etc. And you've got a cookie called logged in. You can see that. So if I do of course, I'm not actually logged into GitHub. I'm not putting any authorization parameters with this. So that should just return this cookie. And a single value, no. Yeah, there you go. Let me do the next one. So the next one is _gh_sesh. And there's your, that's that basically. Now what we can do, you can actually create ones as well. So what you do is you create what's a sort of request cookies collection, which is called a request cookie jar. So up here, I'll just remove these for the moment. They're not relevant anymore. Type in cookie jar equals request cookies. Requests. I wonder if I'm doing this wrong because it's not coming up with the correct syntax predictive texting. What you can do is cookie jar set yum. Because as you can see from looking at them, I'm not averse to cookies. We'll do it for HTTP bin because it will return the cookie. With whatever path we specialize it. and we'll just do test cookie 2. So these are being passed in as tuples with 4 separate, 4 separate items. So change that to test cookie 2, yum 2. I don't know. And then what we do is we just we'll change that to text. And what this will do, I'll change this back to http://bin.org, and it will just reflect my cookies in the response. Ooh, interesting. Oh, it's not org, it's no, it's there's a certain bit for it, sorry. Cookies. There you go. It reflects your cookies. Cookies, test cookie yum, test cookie 2.yum 2. And I've got to wrap it up there. This is just an introduction to requests. I'll do some more elaborate examples of how you can integrate this with, say, unit tests for Python, and how you can actually write proper tests with proper APIs with this. This is based on the original HTTP documentation for requests, which I'll include. I'll just include this as an attribution. Thank you so much for this tool, it's a great tool. Also, I wrote a document which these scripting HTTP request access in Python using requests. I have this on Google Drive, and I'll include this in the recorded version. I'll include a URL to that. But actually, this is enough to really become useful in the tool. This is actually a lot more elaborate than I could possibly do in 40 minutes. It's a very, very powerful framework for, making requests and responses against APIs. It's quite an advanced tool, quite an advanced framework, and I actually really like it. All right, thank you very much.